Hello Mana Guzzlers, my name is Ryan Kinney and welcome to the Noob Report. For today's episode of General Synergy, I wanted to talk about the new Boros commander from Guilds of Ravnica, Tajic Legion's Edge. For one colorless, one red, and one white, you get a 3/2 hasty creatures with the following 3 abilities. Mentor, so when he swings, he can drop a +1/+1 counter on another creature you control. He can prevent non-combat damage to other creatures you control. And then for one red and one white, he can actually give himself first strike until the end of the turn. I had an option to obviously build from some amazing legendary creatures that are coming out of this set. And I saw a lot of buzz around all of them. Tajic, on the other hand, didn't seem to have that much buzz, and I can understand why. Boros is definitely lacking some things to come naturally to other colors, such as the best tutors, the best draw, the best counters. But I wasn't deterred because of that second ability, preventing non-combat damage to other creatures I control. I immediately imagined sweepers, such as Blasphemous Act. It dishes out that 13 damage to every other creature. Tajic would succumb to it, but that's okay. My other creatures can swing in now that my opponents have, no blockers around. And I thought about how many other sweepers there were, and then I saw some enchantments that did a lot of burn damage when I started drilling into my investigation a little bit more. And that gave me life because obviously white has some amazing enchantment tutors. I saw a lot of opportunity in that respect as well. So I obviously want to protect Tajic if I can. So there are a couple of cards that I saw that seemed to fill that hole. One that was pretty popular online was Bastion Protector, and I could see why. It gives him +2/+2, so he's a bit stronger, and then it gives him indestructible. So they're essentially protecting each other when you're doing your sweepers and your burn enchantments. You can also do Helm of the Host, which would make a non-legendary token copy of him, and they would effectively protect each other. And another card I thought was pretty cool was Runetail Kitsune Ascendant. It's a legendary creature that if you have 30 life or more, flips into a legendary enchantment called Runetail's Essence, and it stops all damage to creatures you control, not just non-combat. So it fills that space of making sure your stuff is airtight before we get into this deck list. So first and foremost, the #1 enchantment sorcery tutor that you should be running in this deck is Idyllic Tutor, so you can fetch out some of the cards that are going to be integral to your strategy. So, aside from the sweepers and the burn enchantments, I was really blown away by this next card I'm about to discuss because I told myself if I could find a way to translate all this sweeper damage up to the face of each controller, I'd be in heaven. And I found an enchantment that can, fit the curve really nice. For just 3, 2 of which being red, it deals damage to the creatures that are basically being punched at through these sweepers. So if you do Blasphemous Act and you hit their creatures, each of those points of 13 damage goes up to their face. Excellent. Light Minefield was another super exciting one. For 2 colorless and 2 white, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, but just in case some of my viewers haven't seen it, whenever 1 or more creatures attack, Light Minefield deals damage to each of those creatures equal to the number of attacking creatures. Aether Flash, for 2 colorless, 2 red, says whenever a creature enters the battlefield, Aether Flash deals 2 damage to it. Power Stone Minefield says 2 colorless, 1 red, and 1 white, whenever a creature attacks or blocks, Power Stone Minefield deals 2 damage to it. All of these cards have something in common in terms of they pose a serious threat to Tajic if you haven't sealed the holes, so you want to be cautious of that. However, if Repercussion is spaced up and you've sealed up the holes or Tajic's already on the field and he's protected, you're in a good place to dish out a gross amount of damage for each time a creature comes out into the field for your opponents. Further, they kind of function like the lesser version of Elish Norn. So if tokens are coming out, they're going to immediately meet their demise. If mana dwarfs are coming out, they're automatically going to die. Same for Hate Bears. Aether Flash has a great ability of just making sure that stuff never even hits the field, and they're taking damage for it. I wanted to tech in another card called Legion's Initiative. It just costs 1 red and 1 white. Red creatures you control get +1/+0. White creatures you control get +0/+1. You can also pay 1 red and 1 white to exile Legion's initiative, exile all the creatures you control. At the beginning of your next combat, return those creatures to the battlefield under their owner's control, and those creatures gain haste until the end of the turn. It's obviously a way to beef up the creatures that you have, but it also can trade itself out for a flash. You know, when you run creature-based strategies, especially as aggressive as boros, boar wights tend to hurt us. So you want to give yourself that type of ability of just flashing your creatures out. And they don't even have any downtime because they'll come back with that haste and right in time for the battle, no less. It's an amazing option, and I suggest that you would run it. So, back to the sweepers that I wanted to discuss. I count, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. Obviously, you can run as many as you want, but I think these 5 are the staples, aside from Blasphemous Act, obviously. Chandra's Ignition basically is a sweeper where you choose a target creature and it deals its power out to every other creature and each opponent. So, obviously this fits Tajic perfectly because even if he doesn't have any form of protection, you're hitting all of your opponent's creatures, and then you're also hitting each of them in the face. Deafening Clarion, which also comes out of Guilds of Ravnica, is a sorcery that does a sweep for 3 damage to each creature, but it can also give your creatures lifelink. So it fits what Boros wants to do because, mind you, you're not just burning people, Boros wants to attack. So if you hit each of their creatures for 3 and yours survive because of the strategy that we're running, and then they go in and start attacking and they steal a lot of that life back, that's not a bad trade-off, especially for the cost of this card. It's only 1 colorless, 1 red, and 1 white, 3 mana. That's it? Absolutely. Another card that I want to talk about from Guilds of Ravnica is Cosmotronic Wave. For 3 colorless and a red, it deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control, so it's one-sided, and then creatures your opponents control can't block this turn. So once again, that aggressive Boros strategy is being fulfilled to the highest power. You are pinging damage, they're taking it to the face because you got out repercussion nice and early, and then further, they can't block. Hour of Devastation is another great sweeper. All creatures lose indestructible until the end of the turn, and then it deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-bolus planeswalker. Anger of the Gods, for 2 red and 1 colorless, deals 3 damage to each creature, and also, if a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, you exile it instead. So those hate bears and mana dorks we talked about, all of a sudden, not only are they being removed from your pathway, but they're being exiled. Excellent. So, obviously this deck has a lot of damage that would be better if doubled. So I would suggest running Gisele, Blade of Gold Knight, because all of that damage is going to be doubled up, and all damage being dished out to you will be cut in half. Excellent. And she's also battle ready. She is a 5/5 flyer. She's going to go up in the air and start just taking faces because she's powerful in her own right. You can also run Fire Song and Sunspeaker. It does cost 6 mana, 4 colors, 1 red and 1 white, so it is kind of mana intensive, but it's definitely a great trade. Red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, so I mean that's excellent. All these sweepers are pulling and netting life back to you. Whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Fire Song and Sunspeaker deals 3 damage to target creature or player, which is a nice additive ability. Balefire Liege costs 2 colorless, and then 3 of those little red-white symbols, so you can choose any permutation to cast. It gives +1/+1 to red creatures you control, and +1/+1 to white creatures you control. So if they share identity, then, like Tajic, for example, they're going to be just that much stronger. Further, whenever you cast a red spell, Balefire Liege deals 3 damage to target player or planeswalker. Whenever you cast a white spell, you gain 3 life. And it's a 2/4 at that. So I really like cards like this, especially with the release of the new 2018 Commander decks, because you may have an Escher at your table or an Aminatou, for example, because that's just the type of stuff that's happening in our market right now. When you have cards that give you a chance to hit planeswalkers, it's just added ability that is really worth it at the end of the day. So The next two cards I want to talk about are token generators. If you're going to be going into battle, you have options of going tall or going wide. And I think for this strategy, going wide is probably the best because your sweepers under normal circumstances will be taking your tokens out with them. But if Tajic is there, they're protected. And then you have an overwhelming like army in the can kind of thing going on. Of course, there are some really popular boros enchantments that you could run. I can't think of the name of the one that it gives you muster counters so that you can put out these 1/1 soldier tokens. I love that card, and you could run it if you want to, but I wanted to talk about some that are off the beaten path a bit. The first one being Layal Apprentice. For 1 colorless and 1 red, it is a hasty 2/1 creature with this lieutenant ability. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. That token gains haste until the end of the turn. So every combat, even if you don't battle, you just go through your phase, it's cool. You get a token that not only isn't going to succumb to your sweepers because of Tajic, but it's in the air. In fact, if you run Dragon Master Outcast, which is a 1 red, 1/1 human shaman, you get more tokens that are up in the air. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, create a 5/5 red dragon token with flying. These type of cards are just going to put an overwhelming amount of pressure into this environment or this pressure cooker that we're building with Tajic. Now, I want to talk about some ways to fire back at opponents that may try to dish out damage to you to take you off the board nice and quick. Comeuppance is the first one. For 3 colorless and 1 white, this instant says, and it's a mouthful, prevent all damage that will be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control this turn by sources you don't control. If damage from a creature source is prevented this way, Comeuppance deals that much damage to that creature. If damage from a non-creature source is prevented this way, Comeuppance deals that much damage to the source's controller, like Aetherflux Reservoir. Burn them for that? I say yes. Next card I want to talk about is Deflecting Palm. For 1 red and 1 white, this instant says, the next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, Deflecting Palm deals that much damage to that source's controller, like Aetherflux Reservoir. Okay, look, I've been burned to death by Aetherflux Reservoir a lot just today alone, so, forgive me. But those type of unexpected instants just coming out and dishing back that type of damage is definitely a great way to protect yourself. Further, since we're running a creature-based aggressive kind of strategy, you want to be careful about them using board wipes to try to take you out. Because there are certain things that Tajic can't stop in some of the stuff that we're running. So I would definitely say tech in Boros Charm, for example. Because just for 1 red and 1 white, that instant can make everything that you have on the board indestructible, temporarily. Further, it can dish out 4 points of damage to a target creature or planeswalker target player or planeswalker, if that's what you so need to do. The third one I don't really care for. You can give a target creature double strike to the end of the turn. But having that versatility to go either way is definitely worth the consideration. And the thing I like about all the cards that I just mentioned, they can also come out of Sunforger, which is one of my favorite cards. Comeuppance can he? Yes. Comeuppance, Boros Charm, and Deflecting Palm can all come out of Sunforger suddenly. For those viewers who don't know about Sunforger, it's a 3-drop that costs 3 to equip. It gives a creature +4/+0, which is cool. But for 1 red and 1 white, you can unattach it. Search your library for a red or white instant card with CMC 4 or less, and cast it without paying the cost. It's a great way to just take opponents off guard and protect yourself from death if you need to, and those cards aren't on hand. Naturally, those cards don't need Sunforger to be effective, but it definitely makes it a better option for versatility's sake. The next card I want to talk about is obviously Enlightened Tutor. I didn't talk about it earlier for a purpose. Enlightened Tutor can also come out of the Sunforger and then grab you an enchantment or an artifact if you want to run artifacts in this deck. I don't run too many artifacts, or don't plan to rather. I'm still building Tajic. I want to premiere it at my next pod in the next couple of weeks if I have a chance to. But it's definitely a great choice. Lightning Bolt is another just 1-drop red card that fits Boros' strategy pretty cool. You can just dish out 3 points of damage to any target, so why not? And the thing about Enlightened Tutor and Lightning Bolt that I really enjoy is that it can also go onto Isochron's Scepter. So this is an artifact I think you should run in this deck, despite, you know, like the basic ones like the Signats or Soul Ring and stuff. I would suggest running Isochron Scepter. You can imprint instant card with CMC 2 or less from your hand onto it, and then just pay 2 on each of your turns to use the effect as much as you want. So if you put, Lightning Bolt or Enlightened Tutor, or let's see, even Deflecting Palm fits the bill, or Boros Charm, you're putting it on a stick where you can get that utility just over and over. And when you're playing against decks like having blue in their identity, it's just a good way to just kind of make up for that deficit. So we're at the end of the video, but I do want to talk about one flavor card that I found by accident that I think, you know, would be really saucy in this deck. So there's this enchantment aura called Pariah. It costs 2 colorless and 1 white. You enchant a creature, and it says all damage that will be dealt to you is dealt to enchanted creature instead. I saw a lot of potential in, you know, surprising your opponents in a saucy way with this. If Tajic is face up and you have any other creature next to him, and you put Pariah next to it, you're pushing damage onto a creature that damage is going to be prevented on. So in effect, you're actually circumventing all damage that you would receive as long as you keep your board intact. I really think this is a great surprise for your opponents. I mean, running Boros in this new Guilds of Ravnica set is probably going to be a big surprise to a lot of people anyway, because it's debatably not as popular as some of the other ones, but I really see that as being a saucy tech. So in closing thoughts, have a lot of fun playing with this deck. I will let you know if you want how my experience is with playing against my pod with this particular deck. I think it has the potential to really surprise people, and it is extremely unique. And obviously in this color identity, if you wanted to run a sub-theme for equipment, for example, that's obviously there. If you wanted to run a more token-based strategy, you can run Impact Tremor and Perforos and the type of cards that generate even more tokens so that you can go in that direction. There's just so many ways that you can surprise your opponent. So happy playing, and if you like the video, please click subscribe for my next one. Please hit like, and tune in next time.